well. I'll get all the pretentious stuff out the way. I am a food and fitness blogger for a blog called Running Fat Chef. It was something that I created on August 17, 2016, with the idea that I was not going to become a professional athlete or a public speaker or anything of that sort. It was just a blog that I used as an open diary to people to document parts of my journey, which started off as a weight loss journey and essentially turned into a career that's much more than just my weight, my body, or my background. So before I actually bore you with all those details, I am going to actually put you guys to work. So for the next minute, I want you to choose a random person. I want you to pretend like you do not know anybody in this room. So the whole point of doing these icebreakers, I find that in this society, we sometimes feel like, especially now in the age of social media, we find ourselves almost separating ourselves from everybody else. It is beautiful to be able, for someone like me, I can say my own personal experience of being a person that essentially got their career, well, at least this part of my career, came from just being present and having a voice and finding my voice, and I'm still finding my voice along the way through the social media age. But sometimes we actually lose our voice through social media, through everyday life. Sometimes we find that we find our tribe, we think that we have them, and then we lose our tribe because of differences of opinions, backgrounds, choices, things that are outside of our control. And that's how parts of my journey actually began. So I am 34 years old. I am a resident of Brooklyn, New York. And yes, whoop, whoop, Bed-Stuy. I grew up in Bed-Stuy, East New York, Crown Heights, different areas of Brooklyn, New York. And the last thing that I would have ever associated myself to be is a runner, an athlete of any sort. When I think about growing up during the 80s crack epidemic, when you think of runner and these areas, now areas that a lot of people tend to go to because the prices have raised in New York City tremendously. When I think about the 80s period, it was filled with crime. And anytime that you actually saw a person of color actually running, you would see a group of people run right behind you because there's possibly some type of violence associated with it. And if you thought about any other athlete of color and you associate that with running, it is typically filled with stereotypes of you're running from gunshots or are you a Kenyan? And those are the only people that actually are racist. So when I am looking at myself and I think about almost like kind of like channeling what I saw kind of posted around the campus today, this Mirrorless Monday, I kind of have an inner mirror of myself. And I think to myself, who am I? Who am I going to be in 5 years, in 10 years? Because at one point, I didn't know who I was going to be in the next 5 minutes. So I started off my journey with social work. It's very weird. When I think about this career, I laugh at it a lot of times, and I think if anybody's been downstairs at the meet and greet, I actually introduce to myself to people by saying that I find that my entire career that's actually worked for me is like an entire Bob Ross feel, where I find myself getting into these happy accidents, per se, that happen to just change the trajectory of my life. When I try to force myself into a career, I remember actually going to high school and intentionally cutting high school. I would cut class and would avoid gym class. I would find ways to do my homework. I knew the curriculum, but I was one of those people that was very scared of my own voice. I was scared of my intelligence, and the only way that I combated around that was through humor. So without being the stereotypical funny fat friend at that time, I was the skinny, awkward girl who was afraid to really embrace her own voice. And I realized that that's not just something that actually follows just through elementary school or middle school or high school, but sometimes we take those patterns and we actually bring those things on as adults. I took that baggage with me, being the person that would cut school across the street, because that's how brave I was, cut school across the street, and avoid all these gym classes. And I, ironically, am getting my redemption now as an adult to be an athlete. How ironic. So when I think about that, and I think back to the years of being in college, I changed my major about 6 times. I went from trying to fit this niche in the African American community, especially if you're born in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and maybe even still till now. There is this weird pressure that our parents, and I don't think that it's really meant to be ill-intended, that is this weird pressure that we have to conform to, that you have to be successful. And it's not just something that's limited to African American culture. We are a country of immigrants. And when we think about the future generations, we want them to be better than us. And there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes that American dream can distort a lot of things. So when I think back to my mom, her only thing was, I want you to be a lawyer, a doctor, be an accountant. You're so damn smart, you're stupid. And that's what my dad would tell me. You know, he felt like I was a jack of all trades and a master at none at the time, because my brain would go from here to here to here. But nobody really told me to embrace my creativity, because creativity is not safe. Creativity stimulates fear. So when I tapped into all of the things that brought me onto my Bob Ross effect, everything screamed for me to be a creative. But I didn't know how to do that at 18 and 19 or 21 or even 25. So to kickstart my journey, unfortunately I had a lot of hiccups along the way. I didn't find out until 2017, to kind of like jump ahead of the story. I didn't find out until 2017. This is around the same year that I became internet viral, or as my child would say, hood famous. He's definitely said hood famous a couple of times. I'm not famous enough to walk around and have security, but I am known enough that I can travel to different places and people know who I am. But in 2017, I stopped counting after 4 miscarriages. And that last miscarriage was with twins. That same year, I was diagnosed with endometriosis. It is a painful condition that basically sits on your fallopian tubes. It can sometimes connect to parts of your back, but it's really one of those conditions that it paralyzes you, more than just the physical act, but mentally. As a woman, I didn't feel like I was a woman, because I'm like, great, I can't do the simplest task, which is holding on to a child. And for years, I thought maybe I'm a defect. You know, I don't understand why I can't do the thing that I'm stereotypically supposed to be able to do as a woman. And I realized that I looked at my life essentially the same way for so many years. When I think about high school, I was a person who had 40 credits and I dropped out for 7 gym credits. But it was not the act of dropping out because of defiance, it was fear. And a lot of things that we do in this lifetime is driven off of fear. Sometimes fear, if you channel it the right way, fear can make you the most powerful being in a room. Sometimes it can push you to limits that you didn't think that you can actually touch. Things that we don't even know that we're actually possible, we're quite possible we're actually doing. But you'll never know what you're capable of until you actually entertain fear. And that's what this new career has done for me. So in 2017, I decided, after having that last miscarriage, I can't do this anymore. I was like, there's no way that I can run and I can share this crazy open-ended diary with people. By this point, I was already being harassed and heckled on the internet, and this is before I got hood famous. I would get hate mail on my blog. My blog, Running Fat Chef, is a food and fitness diary that I basically use as a way to communicate with the public beyond social media. Most times people are glued to their phones, and now it may be something that you may recognize on Instagram where people write really long posts. I've been doing that since the land before time. And I had a really good friend who was like, hey, listen, I love you and all, but Instagram is not a blog. And honestly, I still respectfully disagree, because I still write long-winded posts on there. Like I just posted up something probably about 30 minutes ago before walking in this room. But I love the idea of being able to tell and narrate stories and be able to create stories through more than just pictures. Sometimes we get caught up on these pictures and these videos. Like when people see my workout videos and I'm getting down and I'm doing these push-ups, those stories cannot tell you how I got there. A smile cannot tell you how much pain that someone is walking around with. So at times when people are looking at my body is criticized and ridiculed on a daily basis of, she can't do this at 200 and something odd pounds. I do keep up with the number. Today, I am currently at 238 pounds. 3 months ago, I was at 252 pounds. Before I started this journey, I stopped weighing myself at 265 pounds. What does any of those numbers mean? Absolutely nothing. But to society, it means everything. And unfortunately, this journey has taken me on a roller coaster that was beautiful and been a hell to actually go on, something that I don't wish for a lot of people. So I learned how to utilize my social media back in 2013 before I knew this was going to be a thing. I used it as my accountability buddy. I was like, May 25th, 2013, around like between the 25th to the 27th, I find it ironic that you guys have Mirrorless Monday, because I believe that was a Monday when I looked in the mirror and I couldn't laugh anymore. I used to make fun and jokes, and I know my son, he was really young, and he didn't mean it to be, mean or anything, but kids are kind of like, they say some things that's like, ooh, thank you, son, right there in the drawer, And I was naked one day, he walked in the room, and he's like, Mommy, you have a face on your body. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he says, 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. And typically I'm able to laugh at these things. I'm the person that makes jokes before anybody else can make a joke of me, because if I do it to myself, nobody else can hurt me like me. So I went in the mirror and I looked at it and I started laughing until I couldn't laugh anymore, because I was like, oh crap, I can't move my neck. A month, not even a month, less than 2 years before that, I was thriving in the culinary industry. And I was finally at this place where I felt happy. And I was like, wow, I'm actually hitting success. I'm not as scared as I was before. And then I went to work one day. It was in the middle of a nasty joke that I will not repeat here. But I will say that in the middle of this joke at 11 o'clock, I bent over in the middle of this joke and my crew started laughing. And I was the only person that couldn't laugh because I couldn't get back up. So they are so used to me heckling and saying like really TMI things in the kitchen. They thought it was part of the joke, and one of my chef buddies did like this to my back, as in like, oh, that's really, really funny. And I went face first into a pan of lasagna. And they're like, Chef, what's wrong? What's wrong, Chef? And I'm like, there's a pain, and I'm screaming it. And he's like, where's the pain? And I'm like, I can't describe this pain. And he's like, come on, tell me where it's at. The pain was in the crack of my ass, folks. Okay, so at the time, I was just like, woohoo, 2-week vacation. I go to the doctor, and my doctor's like, year vacation. And I'm like, what do you mean? At the time, I was late 20s. And at that time, sometimes you think that you're invincible. You can combat anything. You can fly at 20s. 30, not so much. Like, like 40s is like, screw it, But I went to the doctor and he says, you have sciatica, you have disc degeneration, you have a herniated disc, L5-S1, your vitamin levels are going down, you have a slew of health issues, you are not going back to work anytime soon. And he gave me this laundry list of things that I have to do. And I mean basic things like you can't put your feet down when you're on the subway, carry a step stool. Because when your pain is kicking in that bad from sciatica and all of these back issues, there is no comfortable stance that you can actually get in. There is no laying down, there's no sitting down, You can't lean over a certain way. Next thing I knew, a couple of weeks later, after I refused to take the muscle relaxants, I refused to take all this medication that they provided me, I went back to the doctor, and he's like, if you keep it up this way, you're going to die. And I just remember sitting in that office and just breathing heavy and saying, okay. And he's like, what do you mean? And I was just like, I'm okay with that. You know, sometimes when we think about, and I know this is not suicide week, but as, you know, this is something that sometimes crosses in it, like especially when we talk about certain things like eating disorders. People like to say supportive things like, you know, all you got to do is take it day by day. Why don't you think about your family members, your friends? So you've got to think about yourself. And the thing is, sometimes we are our own worst enemy. If you say 5 vicious things to yourself on a daily basis, guess what? On the 365th day, 366th day, you are going to believe it and you will manifest it. And I did that for so many years. I've had decades of saying terrible things to myself that by the time my doctor told me, hey, you're not going to be here, I looked at it as a sigh of release. I'm not looking at it as this is a way to help my husband be here and be a better person. I don't have to be the superwoman, something that a lot of people of color get caught up in being. We, especially as women, we have to be the people who never fail, we never cry, we're never weak, we're not any of those things, because if we lose any of those titles, then we are nothing. So I felt like maybe, just maybe for like 5 seconds, if I wasn't here, they'll miss me, but then they'll be able to move on with their lives and I won't be a burden. This explains a little bit more of why going into finding myself in 2015 of encountering an eating disorder. So I'll jump into 2013. So there was that day in the mirror. I couldn't laugh anymore. Out of all things that people usually say, social media is terrible, social media saved my life. And sometimes gets me in a lot of trouble. And sometimes there are days that I meet people like the person that I met hours ago who flew from Anchorage, Alaska, to actually say hi to me and work out with me for 4 hours because he met me in New York after I went viral, and it reminds me of why I do the work that I do. So, social media, I reached out to this woman, everyday person. She's a teacher, she lives in Florida. We have not met to this day, but we're Facebook friends. And I saw an Instagram post where she was doing push-ups and all of these things, and I was like, wow, she's incredibly strong. And as much as I'm an extrovert, I am not used to just writing random strangers on the internet and saying, hey, creepy person, can I pick your brain about how did you do this, this, and this? But sometimes we feel compelled, because I get a lot of people that's like, hey, I hope it's not creepy. And I'm like, it's not creepy at all. But I was in my head. And I was like, hey, how did you actually get to a place where you're able to do all those things? And she's like, you seem like such an open person. You know, you're open, but you're closed. You know, sometimes people like me, we hide in like plain sight. We smile, we're friendly, we help people solve their problems, just can't solve our own. Because reflections hurt. Reflections are painful. So she's like, why don't you use your social media as your accountability buddy? So May 27th, 2013 was the beginning date of my chapter of The Running Fat Chef, unofficially not knowing it. And I was like, the running fat chef is going to lose some weight. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with losing weight. Because sometimes I hear the conversations that happen in the body positivity community, and I feel like sometimes the term is taken out of context of what body positivity actually is. Body positivity is not about a number, it's not about a look. It is about embracing yourself at your present state. It does not matter if you are working on yourself, if you are trying to fix something, if you are trying to be happy at the moment. It is not to be confused with anything else. I am so tired of seeing things on the internet about, oh, you're promoting obesity, and it has to be this, and this. Body positivity is simply embracing yourself at this present state. And like I hear other terms like toxic positivity, because that is a very real thing that's out there on the internet, where people are just like, oh, well, you know, I understand that you're going through some stuff, but can't you just smile it away? No, that's not how this works. You know what part of body positivity is accepting that you have a little bit of bullshit going on right now in your life, and that's okay too. Not every day is going to be roses. There's nothing wrong with every day not being roses. But at this very moment, I have 3 tasks. And if I can only complete one, then I've accomplished something. That is body positivity. That is not just a physical reflection. That is here. That's embracing your brain, embracing your heart, and saying, this is what I am capable of doing at this very moment. Maybe tomorrow will be better. And if tomorrow's not better, then maybe next week will be better. But it has to be a conscious effort to embrace who you are. Not what your buddy is embracing about you, not what your friend or your family member or somebody on social media is, about what you are embracing. So I took on this journey, and at first, started off quote unquote healthy. I lost some weight. People started praising me. Oh my God, that's so amazing. Look at you just lose that weight. Oh, you look healthier. Oh, I haven't seen you like this in years. Meanwhile, about 10 years ago, when I was 97 pounds, 5'3.5", people were telling me to eat a sandwich. Are you okay? Are you starving yourself? Skinny girls can't cook. Ha ha ha. And then when I gained the weight, nothing but a fat bitch. Because when people are limited in their vocabulary, that's the first word that they hit you with. They always throw in that word, and they weaponize it. So I lose the weight, and then I got into running because another social media friend that I didn't meet until last year, literally, 16-year friendship now. 16-year friendship that came from MySpace. So that kind of tells you a lot. MySpace. Back then, I did open mics and poetry, and I said some really, really vulgar poems like Lorena Bobbitt. So we're not gonna go anything further than that. So, became friends with this guy online, and he signs up for a half marathon, and I'm like, yeah, if you do that, I'm gonna do it. So he signs up. So I'm like, oh crap, this was just a bucket list item. I don't know how to run. I get out of breath for at 0.001 mile, and you want me to run 13.1? I don't know what I'm doing. But I already committed to it. I'm a true for dare kind of person, and there's no way that I'm backing down out of this dare. So I went out there aimlessly in Crown Heights, in the dark, at 5 o'clock in the morning, sitting here trying to teach myself how to run. And that's when I found my tribe. I ran around in circles, and all I kept thinking as a Brooklyn woman is okay, who are these 6 people that's coming into the park at 5:30? Why are they so happy, and are they gonna stab me? And these women just came up to me, and they're like, hey, how you doing? And I'm like, hey, can you back the hell up? And they're like, are you struggling? Are you okay? And I'm like, I'm trying to figure out how to run. This group was called Black Girls Run. And Black Girls Run, Bed-Stuy chapter, saved my life. Before then, I didn't have a good relationship with women. So people usually talk about relationships, usually hurt them, and they usually talk about romantic relationships. Oh, girl, I ain't talking to that dude no more. I'm not talking to my girlfriend no more now. She's tripping. You have those relationships. My relationship of hurt came through friendships, typically female friendships. So it was in my head. I just told myself, I was like, I can't be that vulnerable with another woman ever again. And I was a person who didn't hug. And hug people, I gave you a hug like this from the side. Hey, how you doing? Hey, homie, yeah. You can open up to me, but I'm not gonna open up to you. Without them ever forcing themselves on me, they made me, and they helped me, and they mended me on this relationship of learning how to trust people, learning how to love people wholeheartedly outside of my safe circle. My safe circle is anybody that I considered family. If you weren't family, you were just outsiders. And through them, I learned the true definition of transparency. Sometimes we see transparency thrown around on the internet. Oh yeah, girl, I drunk this shake, transparency. No, that's not transparency, honey. Sometimes we confuse that word with vulnerability. And vulnerability sometimes seems like another scary word, that's a fair word, that people do not like to touch into, because when you're vulnerable, then that's an opening for people to weaponize. But nobody can weaponize your personal truth. That's something that we have to remind ourselves on a regular basis. You cannot weaponize someone's personal truth. Yes, it may be the most humiliating or scary or, oh, we're not going to talk about that story ever again thing, but once it's out there and it's your personal truth and you own it, there's nobody on this planet that can actually weaponize that type of thing. So here I am, I'm running what Black Girls Run. My friend who signs up for a half marathon never shows up at his half marathon. Yeah, that was fun. What? Good times. Yeah, he reminded me when I met him in London, right before the Berlin Marathon. He's like, you know, you tell the media all the time about this story. You forget to tell people I never showed up. And I was like, well, I was just looking out for you. Just saying, you know, I mean, I ain't gonna throw you underneath the bus, homie, even though you didn't show up, but it's okay. But yeah, he didn't show up to his half marathon, but I still committed because it was more than just a bucket list item. I didn't want to disappoint my friends and my loved ones, and I was committed. I already invested in social media. I'm going to do this. I'm going to show up. They talked me into my first race before. They're like, hey, that's great that you want to sign up for 13.1, but can we talk you into a 10K first because you're a little nuts? So, January 11, 2014 was the first day I ever ran a race. Did not know I was sick as hell and was probably this close to being hospitalized the day I ran, but I ran my first race. And I cried like a baby, and I remember that day feeling this new addiction called running. And I remember my friend ran with me the last 800 meters. She's screaming at me, and she's like, so when are you gonna sign up for your first marathon? I was like, oh girl, you tripping. That's not happening. I'm not signing up for nobody's marathon, but the bug was already implanted in me. Next thing I knew, I was looking up marathons before I even did my half marathon. Sounds good. Everything was cool. I did my half marathon. I think I finished it in 2 hours, 55 minutes. I'm celebrating, my husband is there. At this point, I'm probably about 190 pounds, because I was weighing myself every day. And I was healthy. And then I said, I want to sign up for a full marathon. And I had a mixture of, girl, you crazy, and oh yeah, you could do that from my running community. My running community is like, yeah, you could do that. Come on, let's join us psychos. You know, we want more. You know, but my everyday people is just like, why would you want to do that? Black people don't do that. We don't run from anything but the police. Like, no, we run for other things. Like, we run for government. Stop. Like, you know, like, let's not. Like, come on. You know, get it together, people. But I said, all right, I'm on this feel-good journey. I want to do this. I want to get my marathon. I want to do this marathon. I want to get my shiny medal. I want to make people proud. And I started losing sight because it wasn't about me anymore. My social media almost became addictive. But actually, not even almost. It actually did become addictive because now I am cheering into the, yeah, you go, girl. You look good. So much so that I had a friend that told me, well, yeah, you look good, girl, but marathoners aren't fat. 190 pounds. I was a size 10. Yeah, girl, you can't do that. So, you know how everybody's a nutritionist, a dietitian, everything but their damn job on the internet? I had one of those friends. And that loving friend talked me into a 1,200 calorie diet while marathon training. So for anyone who is not aware of what that looks like, a 1,200 calorie diet is the lowest that on the crappy BMI scale of what you should go for if you are not working out and you are not active. So imagine someone going out there hammering their body for 25 to 40 miles a week on 1,200 calories a day. There is a hell of a deficit. So while my stomach is grumbling and mumbling and mad, and I'm looking at this culinary tattoo that I got from culinary school, and I'm like, oh girl, yeah, let's find a salad. I'm working at the same time. We're not counting in the fact that I was still in the culinary industry at this point. So we're talking about standing on my feet for 8, 10, 12, sometimes 14 hours, 5, 6, sometimes even 7 days a week. Ma'am, I am doing the checklist of everything that you said that you ate today. You are at a deficit of 1,100 calories. And that's what you've been moving around with. That was my wake-up call. And my journey no longer became a weight loss journey. It became what now people call as a body positivity movement. And that's how my real journey actually began. So I never expected to be viral. I never expected to be anybody's advocate. I am so Deadpool-like, it's almost ridiculous. I was so anti-hero because I was just like, anytime that you become somebody's hero, that means that you are a villain in someone else's eyes. People will find things in you and they will always say, well, look at her trying to impress this person. Look at her trying to, show off and do this and this and this and this. And I had to realize over time, and these are things that I've learned really through last year, picking up sponsors and being picked up by companies, that I realized that sometimes people say the most vicious things to themselves, that they have to find company, they have to recruit people. Like, hey, come on this bandwagon of insanity with me. Come on, hold my hand. You don't want to hold my hand? Cool. I'm going to tell you so many negative things that you have no choice but to submit to this torture. And that's what I did. At times I believed it. I was just like, I don't want to be anybody's hero. So when 2017, when that article came out, I wrote an article for theroot.com. I was like, I don't know, I'm not a writer. I've done open mics. I write things on my blog. I talk about my fitness journey because by this point I had gained a lot of my weight back. And when I say a lot, really, like to me, throwing out a number, it was like 215, 225 pounds. I never felt better in my life. My audience wasn't happy because I was already cramming a whole bunch of weight loss stuff down their throat. Oh my gosh, you're letting yourself go. And my response was, pardon me for this, fuck you. That was my response to a lot of people. Like, I don't care. I'm like, I'm not gonna go through this long story. At that time, I was not as comfortable saying to people like, hey, I almost died listening to people's advice. So my only way of articulating this was through F-bombs and sarcasm. I didn't know how to articulate it the way that I actually articulate it now. And when I combined that with a blog, I started getting things that almost dance into the territory of, we're not gonna just talk about your weight, but we're gonna talk about your race. We're gonna talk about you being, identifying as bisexual. We're gonna talk about that you're an unfit parent because you're plus size. When my son was diagnosed with type 1, the worst thing that I ever received, try not to get angry, no wonder why your child's a type 1 diabetic. He has a fat bitch of a whale for a mom. That was so many years ago and I'm still pissed by it. But people will tell you to turn the other cheek. Act like you don't feel anything, it's okay. And then when you combine that with being in the public eye, you're always expected to be the bigger person. You're never a human anymore. You're a public figure. That is my new reality. I am not allowed to emote. Be vulnerable through your Instagram stories, just not that vulnerable to tell them what to do with themselves when they talk about your kid. Or how you're not a fit parent, or you're not qualified to do this job because of your weight, or your status, or your sexuality, or you're gonna get burned in hell, or every nasty message that comes your way. That became my new reality, and I knew it in 2017 when I wrote that article for theroot.com, and it was like, hey, we would love for you to write this article. I'm like, listen, I'm nobody's hero. I'm not a writer. I'm not trying to motivate anybody. And it's like, hey, we'll pay you $200. I said, okay, cool. How many words you want? Because I'm broke, But I did not realize that in 800 words, I would touch over 60,000 people in a matter of 2 days. And I was like, holy crap, my life is completely changed. And I was like, in denial again. It's gonna be a couple weeks. It'll normalize. I had neighbors as New Yorkers, like I'm not as friendly as out here. Like I've said hi to so many people out here, it's ridiculous. In New York, you said hi, what you want? I've had neighbors that I met that I've never talked to the entire time. I was kind of creeped out because people started coming up to my kid and saying hi to him, and I'm like, okay, I don't care what you saw on the internet, don't come to mine. I started getting emails. And not just emails from random people saying good job. I started getting emails from kids. I started getting emails from older adults, and I realized that I found a new tribe. It was for people, the rebels, just like me, who feel like people don't understand them. This was not about me being heckled for it's gonna take your fat ass forever. That was a literal running metaphor for anybody that's ever been harassed for being them, for living in their own body, for vocalizing themselves the way they do. I've had letters from people telling me I did a 30-day challenge, I won the yoga challenge, and they didn't believe me because of my size. I've had kids write me and tell me, I've thought about suicide, I've Google searched it. I know the ways to do it. What do you think? I had a 92-year-old, surprised that she had Instagram. My mom doesn't even have Instagram and she's 60-something. And she wrote me and she's like, people are waiting for me to die. Every time somebody comes and visit me, they're always asking me things like I'm a kid. Did you eat yet? Did you shower? Are you taking care of yourself? I told my family I want to go running, and they told me I was out of my mind. So they took my keys from me. What should I do? This is my inbox on a regular basis. That weight scares me every single day because I'm not nobody's in. I gave up social work. I walked away from social work, but just like the Bob Ross effect, it's brought me back here full circle on the things that I am passionate about. On my arm, I have a tattoo that says passion, dedication, and professionalism. It was something that my chef instructor, who was a former social worker, when I was sitting in class one day, he said to all of us, and I think I was probably the only person listening because a lot of us was just like, okay, it is 10 o'clock at night, why are we still here? And he's like, I was so misguided in my life. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I found that this industry gave me a group of misfits. And the thing that kept me together was passion, dedication, and professionalism. That is something that I embodied into my graduation speech when they asked me to speak. And I didn't think that I would be embodying that in my new journey. So here I am, viral, doing interviews on TV, not media trained, saying things off the riff, like I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like they just put down the F-bomb on the article. Okay, cool. You know, whatever. And I realized that I couldn't go back to the culinary industry because it was a month later and I still had lines of people who wanted me to do this. And I'm like, great. So now I have to leave this industry again after I just got back into it. This is a curse. And then Hoka One One reached out to me. And I became friends with Myrna Valerio. I'm not sure if anybody's aware of who Myrna Valerio is. Myrna Valerio is a plus-size runner who, she's a black woman of color. Black woman of color. She's an African-American runner. And we became friends through Instagram. That's why I say, like, you know, it's very weird of how social media basically defined my career. Became friends through Instagram, and I'm like, hey, you know, I don't know any black people that really hike, and I really want to do it. She took me on my first hike New Year's Day. Just met me, and I'm like, telling my husband, hey, no pressure, but Myrna Valerio's taking the piss in my house. How should I act? He's like, act normal, because she's human. Best advice. Thanks, husband. So we go and we do this hike. It was probably about 2 miles, and I felt liberated because I was like, wow, here I got another element of my tribe. Because sometimes in sports, you see in marathons and the shorter distances, you will see diversity. We can use some work. There's some diversity in the course. You will see people from different backgrounds, shapes, sizes. I feel like in the media, we need a little bit of work. The reason why I have an issue, another layer of why I have an issue with body positivity is because of the marketing. As much as I love the companies that I represent, I choose them, and I'm very selective about the companies I choose to partner with. Because when you look at all of these marketing campaigns, let's throw one piece of diversity in there. So great, now you have your token black person in there. What about the person who happens to have multiple disabilities? What happened to transgender athletes? What happened to the conversations that go with that? Not just, hey, let's put you in a picture, here's your check. Tata, thank you for selling my product. Where's the stories? Where's the narratives that come with this? Because people want to be able to see themselves. When I think back to the kid that was in 4th grade that I wrote down on the papers, and it was my 4th grade teacher, her name is Miss Gaskins. I love this woman to death. I didn't at the time. Sometimes, you have that teacher that really makes you honest. And she's, every time I saw her, I was like, that was a terrible little kid. And I would say, gas ass alert, she's coming. And one day I wrote down something that was really smart ass on the paper. And she's like, have you ever heard of a glass ceiling? What are you going to do when you encounter a glass ceiling? This is after she explained what it was to me. And I told her, 4th grade, well, I don't believe in glass ceilings because I can climb the goddamn walls. And instead of disciplining me, she chuckled and she said, you're going to be just fine. And now I think about that, I think about my 4th grade self, and I'm like, wow, she was much braver than my 25-year-old self. Because she knew what she wanted to be before people polluted her brain, before they wanted her to be. Because glass ceilings only exist if you allow them to. So here I am, climbing the goddamn walls, scaling roofs, I'm scared while doing it. Jumping out of perfectly good airplanes, scaring my mom every time on Instagram. Hey mom, just jumped off the roof, it's cool, it's fine, I survived, clearly. She, hey, can you do a picture without you being nude? It's cool, mom, don't worry about it, it's for a magazine. How much do they pay you? We'll talk about that later, mom, But I find myself now in this new career, and I'm looking to push more body politics out there. As a marathoner, I see all these stories like the Nike, I believe it was Mary Kane, that's talking about things like, Nike told me to do it until I couldn't. Eating disorders are a real thing, especially in sports. There's a pressure, especially when you are signed up to be with companies and you have to be a face. The things that people cannot see on social media is that sometimes even people like me, because I'm considered an influencer, is told to use certain words, certain language. And for me, anybody that's gonna ask me to use a certain language that don't sit right with me is not going to work. And sometimes my ethics and my morals get me in a lot of trouble. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with being a rebel. Because I don't want my child subscribing to any of this crap that I'm seeing out there. When I see a diet tea that's going to magically make you a size 2 when it's just center, because as the chef in me already knows what these products are filled up, I am not okay with that. I am not okay with Vicks vapor wraps with plastic, aka body wraps. I'm not okay with that because it is basically marketed. Like I'd even seen when I was running in -9 yesterday. That was terrible. -9. I was out there and I ran past a place that said acupuncture and weight loss. And I'm like, how does this combination even work? When I went to parts of the Midwest, I kid you not, in an hour program, and I'm a person that do not watch TV, there were 6 advertisements for weight loss clinics. And in those advertisements, at least 4 of them were crammed with women. What is wrong with our society where it's telling us that we're not good enough? When you look at magazines, you can't see yourself. Something in the media has to change. Something in the language has to change. And the thing is, so many of us are filled up with this shame and this fear of talking about things that we're essentially allowing society to dictate how we're supposed to be. So if the discussion doesn't happen, then there is no growth. So I take my big mouth self around in between times of running around like a lunatic. And I like having discussions like this, where I am not a guru, I am not an expert, but I'm able to tell my story and create my own stories of things that I've experienced, things that I hope that nobody will ever follow, things that maybe somebody will actually see better than me, in hopes that the next generation may be able to do better. That is my way of being able to pass that torch like my mom tried to do with me, trying to push me into accounting and business law and degrees and the places that just did not work for me. When he tells me, hey, a kid called me weird today, I said, it's okay to be a weirdo because weirdos are trending right now. Us weirdos are trending. Like, I remember at one point, being a kid in school and I was like, I want to dye my hair purple and orange. And people are like, you don't do that. Like, you have to be with a certain clique to do that, and I was scared to come out during that time. Well, only gay people, or only goths, or only this, or only that do that. If I can talk to my 14-year-old self, I would tell her to throw up a middle finger to the universe and do it, and just be you. So I tell that to my son every single day. So when I look at this new environment, because somehow Myrna Valerio, we become friends, and she starts taking me on trails, and she gets me to sign up for races that scare the hell out of me, and I encountered my first DNF. If anybody is not familiar with the term, it means did not finish. I am not used to, at that point, was not used to signing up for races that you get pulled off a course, or you get scared because you're at mile 18, and then all of a sudden I realize my black card just out of nowhere comes out, and I ain't talking about my Discover card. I'm talking about my black card at mile 18, and I'm like, am I black enough for this? To be standing on the edge with no type of string or any type of support, and it's raining out here, and I'm on slippery rocks, and I've never done this shit before in my life. Okay, my friends back at home are not gonna understand this if I die on this list. So I'm gonna back out of this race right now at mile 18 and take my happy ass home with no medal. That was my first time ever DNFing a course, and next thing I knew, I became the DNF queen, according to the media. Look at her just failing races, and she's just using her fatness as an excuse. How dare she be sponsored when she's DNFing all these courses? She's a joke. That became my new signature because coincidentally, I get sponsored last year, and I have never DNF'd so many races in my life. But being kind to myself, I signed up for 46 races. 14 of them were marathons. I don't know too many people who was actually willing to even do one. I did 14. I attempted 14. Not all of them were pretty, not all of them were glamorous, but they were my personal truths. And people try to weaponize my vulnerabilities. So at this point, I started getting more emails. I went from the person in 2017, probably 1,000, 2,000 followers. Cool, no pressure. Hoka says, hey, let's do a video of actually addressing all those hecklers that say nasty things about you. Cool. Let's actually kick it off, announcing to the world that you're gonna be a sponsored athlete with us. I'm literally like the only face that you would see. Black, queer, unapologetic, loudmouth, tattoos, black woman. That I'm one of, now I can say in 2020, I'm not the only. One of the things that my friends who have followers, follower accounts like mine, or who happen to be celebrities, they tell me, do not read the comment section. I'm a rebel. I'm going to read the comment section. I'm going to reply back to the comment section. And you can't keep up and battle the comment section. You'll read things about yourself that you'll start believing in. You read enough bad comments and I'm like, wow, am I really that terrible? Do I suck that bad? 2019 became hard again. I found myself last year embarking right back into my eating disorder because I had received so much harassment and trolling and bullying that the only thing that I controlled was my food. So I lost 15 pounds in 2 weeks. Sometimes people think that just because you admit that you have an eating disorder, that means journey is over if you start practicing. This is a lifelong trip, guys. It is almost like being an Alcoholic Anonymous. It is not just something that you just stay away from for 3 months and now you're cured. At any given moment when you hit rock bottom, I don't care how much money you have, I don't care what status you have, I don't care what friends you have. It does not discriminate on size, gender, background, financial status, gender. It does not discriminate. I've had people that told me, oh, she must have faked her races. Now that she's popular, there's no way that she actually finished. That was last year, February, and today might be the anniversary of that. 15 pounds, 2 weeks. And I found myself saying the only way to get through this is to be transparent about everything. So not only was I transparent about my eating disorder, I was transparent about my invisible diagnoses, the sciatica, the disc degeneration, the endometriosis, the gastrointestinal issues. And of course, some people said, oh, look at her looking for an excuse. But for me, that was freedom. Being that open Nobody can weaponize that for me. Nobody can say, oh, well, that doesn't even exist. When it comes down to, because I've spoken to a couple people, and I find that when you have invisible diagnoses, it's a different type of hell. When you see someone that has a visual disability, it's a weird thing. Like when one of the athletes that's actually trained me, like right now I'm in the transition of training from a triathlon. And everybody's like, hey, what's the date? Did you sign up for a race? I have not signed up for anything. But my journey is going to take me into an Ironman. So I had an Ironman athlete, fellow Ironman athletes, they're training me. And one of the athletes that's training me is a person with visible disabilities. He has limb loss. He doesn't have legs. That does not stop him. I love being able to work with people who are saying that I am great. I am not just defined by one thing. But sometimes when I hear the language that comes out of people's mouths about people who have visible diagnoses, I have friends who have visible diagnoses, and sometimes the comments makes me cringe. Oh my God, you're so amazing. It's almost like glorifying that you're disabled, that you have a disability. But when you have someone like me who you can't see their disabilities, look at her using her excuses. We can't see your hurt, so we don't believe you. There's no sympathy with that. So you don't know if you want people to empathize with you, but I realize that if I am honest about it, it allows me to make room for other people to be honest about their own personal journeys. I'm not saying for somebody to make a whole blog or put it out on social media, but come to terms with their personal truth. And along the way, find your own voice. I found myself talking to one of the students here, and I won't reveal her name, but one of the things that she actually said in conversation with me, what I've noticed in conversation with me, when she had a conversation with me, is that she kept saying the word sorry, especially as women. We tend to be apologetic about things that we're not supposed to be apologetic about. Okay, somebody stepped on my foot. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry for what? That person stepped on your foot. They're sorry, not you. We find ourselves apologizing. It's not just something that's limited to women. This is just everyday life. We apologize for our existence. So the one thing that I've asked her to do as an exercise is to practice not apologizing for who she is and what she is feeling at this very moment. Too many of us are apologizing for who we are. We are apologizing for our existence. We're apologizing for our weight, our lack of weight, not being able to explain, giving an explanation to people who are not deserving or have not earned us. I find myself catching myself on social media when someone's like, oh, well, can you prove your disability? What? Can you prove your social security number? Like, can you show me, can you distribute that? Can you show me your bank account and statements to prove that you make X, Y, and Z amount of money a year? No, then why should I have to prove that? I think that sometimes we are, especially in this day and age, we are now caught up in this idea that it has to be a show and tell. Let's see, it's the oppression Olympics. Let's see who has it worse than the next person. Oh, girl, you fell down the stairs? Well, I fell down the stairs, broke my neck. Hey. Mm-hmm. Like, this is not a competition of who has it worse. This is about acknowledging that, yes, we all have our challenges, we have our hurdles that's presented to us, but we all can overcome it. So when you hear your friend saying, hey, I need help, ask them, how can you be helpful? Not just throw out some words. Sometimes we have friends who just need us to hear them, to vent. And if that vent, because on the other hand, you have to take into consideration too, if that vent is too much for you to take, respectfully say to your friend, your family member, your loved one, hey, I want to be able to help you, but this is selfishly too much for me. We have to know how to help these people when they're hurting, when they need help. If you have observed someone with an eating disorder, I can tell you as a person with an eating disorder, the worst thing you can do is tell me directly face on, you have an eating disorder, you need to get help. Because I'm probably going to look at you and say, no, you need help. It's going to be a defiant act. But you can find ways to navigate around those conversations. Hey, is everything all right? Anything you want to talk about? If you ever need me for this, or if they actually hit direct them into a direction of a professional. Sometimes we are so helpful that we are damaging our loved ones, that we find ourselves giving advice for things that we're not qualified to give advice for. Sometimes, but this is the reason why you don't find doctors operating on their loved ones. You're too emotionally attached to be able to give logical advice. I tell people on the internet all the time, hey, I might be a social influencer, but I'm not about to give you advice on how to do this professionally. What I can give you is what works for me. Sometimes the best thing that you can offer people might be your silence, might be your ears, might be active listening. Active listening requires for you to listen and truly take in the information. Too many of us are listening with the intent of giving back before that person has ever had anything to come out their mouth. Sometimes it's combative, sometimes it's not helpful. A lot of times it's not helpful. If you think that you are helping someone, like when I get antagonized on the internet for people telling me to lose weight, well, I'm just telling you because I want you to improve your health. Medical trolling is not going to help me. Good luck with that, honey. I want you to put the sandwich down, put your hands up. Wait, hold up, I'm getting arrested? Like you're not helping this situation. I do not, and I'm not obligated at that point to produce a medical report of what my chart looks like. You are not obligated for that because you have not earned it, and you don't need these things. Be comfortable with who you are. Be comfortable that we're past Mirrorless Monday, that you are comfortable with your reflection on Tuesday. And if you cannot find one good thing to say about yourself, I honestly would implore you to actually pick up sticky notes. And I think there might be some sticky notes here in this room. Pick up sticky notes and try it on a daily basis. Take a pen and paper, keep it right there by your bedside. Before you pick up your phones, before you look at your social media, before you yell at your neighbor to keep the noise down, I want you to take that sticky note and write 3 beautiful things about a part of your body or your mind that you have problems with. And I want you to only write positive things about it. And if all you can produce is 1, then that is a work in progress, and you're gonna keep doing that. And I'm not talking about the areas that's easy, like, oh girl, I got a big old booty. I like that, I'm proud of that. I'm talking about the things that brings on insecurities. For me, my insecurity comes from my disabilities. When I have a following of 40,000 people watching me on the internet, and they're like, oh girl, like, we're looking forward to that next race. And I'm like, oh great, can't show up to that next race because I'm in pain. Hey guys, can't show up to this 4-miler, but you just did a marathon last week, you can't do a 4-miler? And I don't feel like that's the day I want to give an explanation because I'm bounded up in bed because my sciatica is flaring, and now my endometriosis is kicking in. I'm laying out on my back, and now I have to produce a pretty little picture of pain just to prove to the internet that I am actually a disabled athlete. On those days is when it is crucial for me to pick up that paper and write down 3 great things about that area. And sometimes the only thing that I can write down on there is that pain reminds me that I'm still alive and I'm still a woman that's a work in progress.